Welcome to a special edition of Tell Me Your Story, Mayhem to Miracles from the Sacred Stories Publishing Company. And this is one of 12 interviews that we are conducting with 12 of the 30 authors who have submitted stories to this compendium that I have been using. That's the word I am using. It's sort of a trilogy. There's Chaos to Clarity, where we interviewed 12 of the 25 to 30 contributors to that book. Then there came Crappy to Happy. Now we're dealing with Mayhem to Miracles, and my very special guest, and I have to tell you what a joy it is to have him back on the program again, a gentleman who I've read his earlier works and was enthralled by them. I even recorded your book, actually several of them, as audiobooks, but it was for private consumption for myself and my wife. And those people who are listening will know who I'm talking about when I say that I recorded the Celestine Prophecy on cassette for myself and my wife. James Redfield, thank you so much for joining us and contributing to Mayhem to Miracles.
Well, my pleasure to be with you, and certainly to have contributed to the book. That was a lot of fun.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about your contributions, but also we'd like to talk, of course, a little bit about the work that surrounds the. It's more than just a trilogy. It's a multitude of different books having to do with the Celestine Prophecies, and. First of all, I want to remind our listeners that Mayhem to Miracles, which again is a compendium of 30 letters, or stories, I should say, 30 stories, of which James Redfield has written one, and he has contributed to this work. And his particular story, which I'm intrigued by the title, we're going to find out more about it, We Are All Chosen. And that takes on for me, James, a sort of a biblical connotation, and I'm going to guess it probably is where that comes from, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But our listeners need to go to sacredstoriespublishing.com, where they can order a copy of the book, Mayhem to Miracles, and actually read a little bit about it. And a reminder, of course, that this program, which is heard on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., as well as and that's on Sundays, 1 a.m. on Mondays, and 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We also have podcasts on SoundCloud and iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Blueberry. I was going to say Blackberry, but that's not what that is. Blueberry. But also we're on iHeartRadio as well as Amazon Music. And you can watch these interviews on YouTube. You can watch these interviews, and I hope that you'll go to our guest's website. We will be linked to James' website so that you can find out more about him. If you don't know anything about him, oh my goodness, you need to find out, because he's shared with us some incredible insights through many of the works that he has written, not just the Celestine Prophecies, but that's probably what you are most known for, at least in this present day, I would think. But I'm hoping that you're known for more than just that, the legacy that you leave behind, or I shouldn't say leave behind, but that you share with us, here and now in terms of improving our lives, making our lives better. And one of the things we focus on this program is teaching us, showing us how to thrive. Is that a fair assessment of what James Redfield is about?
Yeah, I think it is. Certainly the Celestine Prophecy, my first book, was really about a movement that was occurring. And this was back in the 90s and the turn of the century. But the Celestine Prophecy is really about finding your own unique path into spirituality. And when I say spirituality, I mean a consciousness, a shift in your connectedness, or your feeling of connectedness, so that your life unfolds in what feels like tiny miracles. And certainly I hearken back to Dr. Carl Jung and his extension of Freud's depth psychology into what was really turned out to be a spiritual psychology, meaning a transcendent sense of oneself in the world. And he, of course, coined the term synchronicity.
He's the one.
He's the one, and he said that this was a phenomenon in nature, a principle in the universe, and it was the experience of meaningful coincidences. And what I did with that idea is to fashion a story, and it's a novel. And of course, the Celestine Prophecy it is about living a kind of synchronicity, being, asking for and getting those mysterious synchronicities that extend our lives, that tell us that life is not arbitrary. Life is not just about rationality. Life is about a journey in which we come to be more connected with the spiritual and more connected with our own destiny in the world. And that means the project.
I seem to have lost you. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Dispatch A1. Painted K fire. Dispatch A1. Oh my goodness.
In the world, and that means the project.
Wow. I wonder what happened. Oh, James. There he is.
Everything.
Hello again. Hello.
Sorry about that.
Hey, that's all right. You know, I think this dovetails really well in what you were just talking about Carl Jung and synchronicity. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play for you the last thing that you said here. All right.
Come to be more connected with the spiritual and more connected with our own destiny in the world, and that means the project.
All right. That's where it cut off.
Okay.
So
destiny in the world.
So if you can pick it up from there, if you'd like to pick it up right from there, I'll just count you down. All right. If you can gather your train of thought there. All right. All right. I'll count you in 3, 2, 1.
And what I mean by destiny in the world is that, there's a feeling that we can step into a path in life that feels, again, destined in the sense of something that we're called to do. If we talk about spirituality in terms of spiritual consciousness, it's a kind of transcendent view of your life that we can step into. And we're writing a new book now about what I believe that is, in the sense of there's certain alignments, or you might call it designs in the universe that we can get compatible with, and when that happens, our lives open up with a lot more of a sense of fulfillment and a call to some mission that we want to contribute to the world.
Well, that ties really well into certainly your story in Mayhem to Miracles, but also in general into the synchronicity that you say Young came up with. And one of the things that I have found so profound in the process of doing these interviews is that level of synchronicity, not only in terms of the subjects, the conversation that we have and the subjects that we touch upon, but also in terms of the things that happen. Now, normally, in a situation such as this, I would never ever share what I'm about to share, and it's not that it's secret or anything. It's just that you don't usually draw attention to these certain things. But I've shared this many times in terms of interviews and the challenges that I face from time to time with getting interviews. Now, years ago, I wanted to have you on this program many years ago, long before I ever actually did. I thought, boy, it'd be great to have him on the program to talk about Celestine Prophecy and so forth. And I let it go. I just said, you know what? I'm going to put it out there, and boom, the next thing you know, you and I, we're communicating. I'd like to consider us friends, and bear in mind, I am still intrigued by and moved, of course, by the writings that you have in that first book, Celestine Prophecy. But I'm not, it's one of those situations where I know a lot of people, they still go gaga over you, oh, James Redfield. James, you put your pants on one leg at a time, just like me. Come on, let's not go there any more than, oh, Richard, tell me your story. Oh my gosh, incredible. I'm talking with, come on. We're two human beings, and all we're trying to do is make it in this world and trying to share that with other people. But what has happened is, as James and I are conversing, this is the third time this has been attempted in about 3 months. The third time. For whatever the reasons are, we're not even going to go into that. The fact of the matter is that I have developed the principle. The harder it is to get a guest on the program, the better that interview is going to be. And to me, that's synchronicity. It's like the interview, in this case, isn't going to happen until it's time, until it's ready. And the subject matter.
Line and all that, for communication like this, especially heady stuff like we're talking about. This is, the world is designed, I think, to do much more than we think, that most of us allow ourselves to assume. And you talk about fame. My first book was the best-selling book in the world for 2 years, and in the story, that's exactly what I'm talking about, because nobody could understand why I didn't move into fandom, the whole blitz of that kind of thing. And but what I really felt was that I needed to step back and let the book be the message. It wasn't about me. And so in the story that I present in this book, I really frame it that the reason I didn't get ahead of the book was because I felt like it was so mysterious the way the whole thing happened for the book to
Yeah.
occur and for me to get it out, that people will think, well, I was chosen. James was chosen to develop, to deliver this message. And so, I just stayed behind the book. And that issue, of course, I've always been sensitive about, but I'm mellowing out now. So I don't stay behind the book anymore, because now what I think is that we're all chosen. Now we're chosen for different things, and there's one is not better than the other.
Right.
One is as significant in the sense that it happened on time. It happened in the world, and to speak to your last point, things happen on time.
Yeah.
We say the right thing because it comes to us, to a person that we meet on the street. The odds being, really great that the meeting never should have happened. But we say something that touches them. It's a mysterious coincidence. It gives them a sense of new direction, or answers a problem they have, or resolves something. And that's what it's all about. So that was my point in the article. I think people will like it because I tell the whole story, all the mystical aspects of how the thing happened.
Well,
And
we're talking with James Redfield. We're talking, of course, about the contribution he has made to Mayhem to Miracles, published by Sacred Stories Publishing, sacredstoriespublishing.com. We certainly hope that you will pick up a copy by going to the website. I'm sure it's available as well as on Amazon and other outlets as well. And we hope that you will stay with us right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is such a pleasure to, of course, have as our guest here on the program one of the contributors of Mayhem to Miracles, James Redfield. Who is, many people know who he is because of the work that he's done. His first book became extremely popular, very popular, #1 and all that good stuff, Celestine Prophecy. And I mentioned to you that I had recorded it myself. I had read it into a tape recorder for my wife. And, that was the beginnings, I suppose, of my audible recording session, but again, it was for private use only. I never shared it with anyone else other than my wife. She may still have the cassettes for all I know. And I've recorded a number of other books as well. But one of the things that has struck me about reading books such as that, another great friend of mine who has since passed on, Og Mandino, wrote the Greatest Miracle in the World, which is how I met my first wife. As I'm reading these books, my friend, the movie is playing in my mind, okay? I can see all of the action and the adventure and the drama and so forth, and the people who are involved. I may not actually get a good look at maybe their faces per se, but I'm seeing this unfold in my imagination. And I remember, this is not one I read, I listened to this particular book off of a CD. And again, this is long before they became quote-unquote audibles, was, of course, Dan Brown's book, Da Vinci Code. I saw what the man was going to look like, the main character in the movie that Tom Hanks played. And when I saw the movie, I'm going, did they hook up a coax cable to my brain and siphon off the images? Because it looked exactly as I had pictured it as we listened to the book. Tell me about how important it is when you are writing, and this kind of goes not so much to your process, but in terms of making sure that when you do write these different stories, that the images come through. Because the thought has occurred to me that if we start to be able to communicate telepathically, we're not going to be communicating words. We will actually be communicating images, which are much more descriptive than words could ever be. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Well, I find that all authors are a little different in their process, but really what it's really the energy. Gurdjieff said that all art has an objective energy. In other words, the artist puts into the work a transferable objective energy, so that what you feel when you look at a painting or read a book is what the artist put into it objectively. And I know exactly what you mean about being in the story. That's the measure for me. As I write and as I reread as the reader, it's okay. How much is it alive? Is it you can smell the smells and see the sky and feel the emotions, and so that's why I spent a lot of time writing books. I spent years, and that's what I'm after is this sense of energy that it has to pull you into the journey and know what's happening in the journey.
So you're actually sort of directing the film in your mind, in your imagination, as you're writing, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I read
and rewrite and rewrite.
7 times.
Exactly. And I, if I may ask, how many times did you have to go back and revisit the story? I've often think about the short stories that I wrote in high school. I was in a Southwest literature class, and we were told we were going to write these stories. And I wrote a story. It was, I don't know, maybe, and again, we're talking about college size rule paper, that kind of thing, and in longhand. And it was probably 12 or 13, maybe 14 pages. And I got a really good grade on it. I mean, my instructor, his name was Mr. Miller. God rest his soul. He was so much fun. And he really liked it. And he says you ought to continue. And it was an interesting story. The title was Conflagration at Sea. And it was a story within a story. The actual story was one that one of the characters had written and had submitted for competition in a writing course. And he'd been doing this for years. And this was an elder gentleman, maybe in his 50s or 60s. And a young kid of 17 comes along and wins the prize. And it just incenses and enrages him to where he actually carries out the events that he actually wrote about in the story that he submitted. And I've often thought I need to pull those up, and I need to maybe put those on the computer, type them out, and then maybe expand on those. But it's sometimes it's a lot of fun just to sit there and start to muse. And then of course back before computers, doing a longhand, I just didn't have the patience for that. But I've also been told that that's actually one of the better ways of writing. And now, I would take it you probably used a typewriter at the very least, or a computer. Or did you do it in longhand?
Well, actually, my first book I did in longhand, just because I was doing it. I was writing even the first draft in a number of places, and this might sound a little superstitious, but my aim, and some of this was intuitive, right? I just brought this to it. My aim was to write a book that everyone would understand, whether they knew psychology, whether they knew spiritual concepts from various religions, or no matter what they knew. Mm-hmm. I wanted it to be a story that presented that much feeling and information that in a way that they could follow along.
Yeah.
So I wound up writing it longhand in omelet shops and restaurants, even in a bar in the middle of happy hour. That resulted in a lot of stories. Mm-hmm. But what I was trying to do is just get in the middle of human interaction, and then because it kept me grounded. This was not the Celestine Prophecy was not a theoretical book; it was an experiential book.
Mm-hmm.
So that what we're talking about is real spiritual connection in the sense of the heart opening and in this sense of guided intuition comes in. It worked, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody thought it was funny because there were plenty of computers around, but I wrote most of the first, at least the first draft of that first book long. So.
Yeah. We're talking with James Redfield, author of Celestine Prophecy. He's also the author of and few are chosen. I'm sorry. No. And all are chosen. How about that? Sort of a dovetail off of the many are called, but few are chosen. But the reality is that we all are chosen. We'll find out chosen for what as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. I thank you so much for joining us here on the program as we come your way with lots of insight and information. Celestine Prophecy has, I've lost count, 12, is it 13, is it 14 insights?
No.
I've lost track.
They're just 9.
Just 9.
That, and of course, ultimately with the 3 sequels, wound up with 12 of these insights, which I now call design features in the universe, where we can get in tune with how the world's really supposed to work.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun making that journey.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But I want to talk about this aspect of how we all are chosen. Chosen, is it basically what you have already spoken to, and that is chosen to raise our consciousness, to live our life's purpose, a combination of that and a bunch of other things as well?
Well, it's one contribution, one mission that we at first just get an intuition of, a picture of in our minds. It could be just a moment that with one person that shifts, that in its innocence or in its energy shifts just one other person toward a more open, spiritually oriented life, and or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
A healing for a disease. These things, I don't reduce them to careers or missions or in the sense of some long journey of preparation and then becoming famous for it. It's not about fame. It's about letting ourselves be guided into a contribution that changes some aspect of the world. And I think we all have that. We all feel, especially as adolescents, that we're here for some great purpose. And we are. Yeah. It's just not being famous. It's not being rich.
That's not what it's about. You might become famous, you might become rich, but that's not, if you want to put the word goal on it, that's not the goal. I think that for me, and you probably would feel the same way, I'll let you respond to it, it's to be of service. I mean, my boss here at the station that I work for here in Santa Barbara, that is our mantra. It is our motto. We are here to serve. There are days when I don't want to. Because the demands sometimes are overwhelming. At least they feel overwhelming. But I have to remind myself that I am here to serve. And even if it does feel overwhelming, I'm still here to serve. And if I can do it. And one of the wonderful phrases that I really I really try never, and this sounds almost oxymoronish, I try not to use the response to a request the word no. If I am not sure, if I can't give them an emphatic, oh yes, we can do that, I will respond with, let me see what we can do. Let me see what we can do. I've always believed in workarounds. Always. Even before computers came along and there was more than one way to accomplish something on a computer. That has been sort of at the forefront of my service to people is, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What is it that you want to achieve? How can I support you in that? How can I facilitate that through the work that I do so that I can be of service to you? And I think that dovetails into this other aspect too. You know, you talked about fame and money. Well, I look at it from this perspective. James, you have a project that you want me to help you with. I want to help you with it so that you become successful. Because if I help you to be successful, then I become successful.
Well, that's, you know, my reaction to that is, you know, I think one of the most important design features in the universe, and one that's coming up, it's delightful for me hearing you talk about that, revolves around, and it's like this, the karmic structure in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It all revolves around helping. And I believe that, you know, people instinctively know this now. You know, from the dog eat dog world, we're, in my view, moving toward a more conscious helping world. And what happens is if you're a helper, if that's what you think about doing, if you want to help people, then what happens is that karmic reaction is for you for other helpers to be moved into your life. So not that one deserves the other, but to me, that's the karmic structure. So that if we're motivated to give, we draw into our lives more givers, and life goes better for the givers. Now, if we're a taker, and we all know takers, you know, it's a taker of energy, a taker of money, you know, we've all fallen into taking in our lives.
Yeah.
But if you're a taker, it's as simple as this. If you're a taker, you draw more takers into your life. In your life, synchronicities slow down. People lead you astray. Your projects get ambushed, and I've seen it so much. You know, it's just a common sense for me now that it's more fun to give, and you have a happier life when you give.
I could not agree with you more. And it is, from my perspective, it is to the consternation of family and friends. When I was first in this business working for a Christian station and someone would come to me with a project, you know, I knew they didn't have a whole bunch of money. These were small little ministries and churches and so forth. And I would rather do the work for the small amount to help them to get their message out than say, no, this is my rate and that's what I charge. And they say, okay, thank you anyway, and not do the work at all. So that was my perspective. And, oh, Richard, you're underselling yourself. You should charge more, and on and on and on and on. I figure one day maybe, you know, the pennies and the nickels and the dimes and the quarters will start rolling in. Whatever. I'm doing pretty well right now.
The money, it's about the life.
Yeah.
The life, enjoyment of the life.
Absolutely, absolutely. James Redfield, my guest here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I'm so glad you're with us here on the program along with James. We're talking about, of course, the work that he has done in contributing to Mayhem to Miracles through Sacred Stories Publishing. That's sacredstoriespublishing.com, the website where you can order your copy. I think that it's a work that is there to help to transform your life. And James, first of all, you used a word earlier that I use it, but I don't pronounce it the way you pronounce it. Okay? I pronounce it coincidences, incidents that coincide. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe that there is no reason for these different things. And I don't know how much television you watch. I probably watch enough for the both of us. But there have been some television programs and movies that have come out that will start to show several different independent stories in the first maybe 15, 30, 45 minutes to an hour, okay? They're totally independent, have nothing to do with one another. And then all of the sudden, two of those paths start to cross. Okay, two of them start to cross and they have an interaction. And then a third crosses those two, and then the fourth and fifth, and so on and so forth, to where they begin to, you begin to see just exactly how we are interconnected. To me, those are fascinating stories that I think need to be told.
It's, and lived.
And
Um,
lived.
Once you start looking for synchronicities, what happens is that there's a one around every corner. It there's some synchronicities that are challenging, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a stretch. You're called to stretch
Yeah.
and get larger and get more wise.
Mm-hmm.
There's synchronicities everywhere if you really see. I've found it most important. I mean, I don't call everything every encounter, every interaction, every car we drive by, every light that turns red. I don't call all of those synchronicities.
No.
But if what I think is important is if anything negative happens, you call that a synchronicity. And the idea is if you can find a positive in that, no matter what happens, if there's a silver lining, something that even if it's a brick wall that you've hit with a business or something, there's always a message. Change your attitude, change your friends, change your goal a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's and in that sense, so that you can almost say all of these big turns in your life are synchronicities, even if some of them are very challenging. And what this does though is it fills your life with all these encounters that, as you say, are meant to be recognized and lived and treasured, really.
Yeah.
More you can do it. To me, the greatest one, we talk about giving and getting, if you're giving synchronicities, that's the best.
Yeah.
And what that means is, you're talking to someone and it intuitively comes to you, something that you should say. Now it'll come as an idea, maybe an experience you had about, a problem you solved. It'll just come to mind.
Yeah.
And if you think that is something you should give, then what happens is that when you say it, work it into the conversation, very often that person will say, that's exactly what I needed to hear in this moment. This is why we're talking. That's what I needed to hear, what you just said.
Yeah.
So if you're the best kind of giving is to give synchronicities like that. They're intuitively, you participate in the great miracle of how the world works of that, and the divine occurrences in the world.
Right.
And the great thing is that when you do that, what happens is more and more people come with your helping hand coincidences just when you need those.
Absolutely.
And challenge people. I talk about this so certainly that, what I really do is challenge people now. Hey, that's the real design of the world. The design of the world is not to feel like you're lost in the negative funny farm.
Yeah.
It's get on the path of giving and get into helping and receive, more in life. And I think that might be the real awakening that I feel of consciousness that I feel is happening out there right now. That search for and finding, meaning that revolves around helping each other, as you said.
It's extraordinary life that we live. I want to ask you about this concept of transformation as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story with James Redfield. James Redfield's the author of the Celestine Prophecy and the 3 sequels, and we're also talking about the work that he has contributed to Mayhem to Miracles, published by Sacred Stories Publishing, and we certainly hope that you will go there and find out more about not only James, but also other works that Sacred Stories Publishing is putting out. I'm Richard Dugan, your host of Tell Me Your Story, along with James Redfield, and I wanted to ask you, James, about this concept of transformation. I put forth this theory. In the New Testament, in the Gospels, Jesus is there with his disciples, and he's performing all of these miracles. Wonderful stuff, whether it's turning water into wine, healing people, raising the dead, and so forth and so on. And the apostles, they're just like wide-eyed, wow, that's pretty neat. Hey, could you teach us how to do that? It's like asking a magician, could you reveal your secrets to us too? And basically, and again, I'm paraphrasing because I ain't King Jimmy, you think this is great stuff? You guys want to learn to do this? Sure, no problem. But let me tell you something. You guys are going to do greater works than this. And I've theorized, James, that the greater work is transforming our lives, raising our consciousness, if you will, becoming more aware of the others around us and having that compassion for both ourselves as well as the others. What about you? What do you think that was meant by that in terms of the greater miracles that we would do?
Well, who knows? I would say, but I really would say what we've just been talking about, living life at a higher level of giving and interaction and helping each other. There wasn't a lot of that going on back then. There were a lot of sword fighting, but there was not a whole lot of that kind of, giving of tenderness and from the heart and all that goes on, that can go on now. Now we're living in a very divided time, but it's my view that consciousness is moving up into a different octave, and that is why, and the division is over whether we're going to live materially or whether we're going to move into this kind of elevated, spiritually connected world. And the world of the dark side is tests that, and we shouldn't be surprised that if they think nobody cares, then they want to get everybody dependent on the material world in life that they champion and want to see grow.
Yeah.
So it's a great, it's not, it's a crisis of everything, but it's also a chance to find a spirituality that has been missing in the kind of sleepiness we've been in for so long.
Yeah. I've been watching, I've only watched a couple of episodes of this program on television, and it's called Dope Sick, Dopesick. And it's focused primarily on the opioid epidemic that we have experienced since the 90s. And I'm watching this program, and I'm watching all of the drama and everything, and that's all having to do with pain relief, okay? Managing and taking care of pain. And I'm sitting here listening to the arguments from both sides, and I'm going, well, wait a minute, hold it. Could you people stop for just a second? Are you even concerned about where and why the pain is being caused? I know you want to alleviate the pain, for whatever the reasons, monetarily or humanitarian reasons. But what about figuring out why the person's in pain in the first place? And I've even heard it said, James, that 99% of our pain is caused by our mental and or emotional states, and that no pill will ever alleviate it until we deal with those mental and emotional situations. Your thoughts on that?
Well, we talked about Carl Jung and
Yeah.
his discovery of synchronicity. Well, he also made a lot of advances in mental health, and what he broke from Freud famously, because Freud thought that what was bothering humanity was their sexual urges. That caused all the problems. But what Jung found and convinced himself of, and many others since, is that what we're running from, what causes the most pain and anguish and confusion, mental confusion, is a forgetting that what we need is spiritual connection. We've gone through 400 years, 500 years of extreme secularism, extreme materialism, where there's nothing real but just the stuff you see around you. And what that causes is a kind of lack of grounding, an absence of those intuitive guidances that, and of the transformation that you talked about. And what we do is we repress all that, the need for it. And we go into other ways, other preoccupations that give us some sense of power in the world. And of course that is, it explains what Jung also pointed to, is that the psychopathology that exists in organized workplaces that have now become multinational arms of influence on the world. And when that's not giving, when that's big time taking, then it just creates more and more of that kind of angst in the world. And I think that's what, of course, happened during this age of materialism. But without a doubt, we're breaking free of that. And we've started breaking free of it, centuries ago. Carl Jung's the first work was already 100 years ago. So that we were moving out of this, but what we still see is huge entities in the world needing control, and needing power and getting together and trying to create that. But there's a lot of things that went wrong. The pain is not just emotional; the pain is physical.
Sure.
We lost the connection, really in the 1930s, when all over the world people left their homesteads and farms and a connection to the earth, and they went to participate in the industrial revolution, or to make that widespread. And what was lost in that was natural health. And we're having a big battle now about what keeps you safe. Is it something you buy from the same people who say it's the healthiest way, or is it something? Is it a more natural lifestyle that's missing? That when everybody was on eating great food on the homestead, that kind of healthiness. Other things went wrong, but that kind of basic healthiness, physical body healthiness, was intact. So we've lost a lot of that in the materialism and and the need for money rather than spiritual connection. But it's, again, I'm very optimistic that this is short-lived, and we're rising into a kind of consciousness that we just have been talking about, that will replace all that's wrong out there.
Well, I'm glad to hear of your optimism. I share that optimism for the future, and I want to share a little bit of that, or talk to you a little more about that as we continue here. James Redfield is my guest. He is the author of the Celestine Prophecy and the 3 subsequent sequels, as well as We Are All Chosen is the title of the story, and it is in Mayhem to Miracles, published by Sacred Stories Publishing. Go to sacredstoriespublishing.com to order your copy of the book, and maybe even look into getting the other 2 elements, if you will. Chaos to Clarity, that was released in, I believe it was December or January of 2018. I stand corrected, 2019. And then in 2020, they had Crappy to Happy. And now in 2021, it's Mayhem to Miracles. We hope that you will get your copy very soon. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. And we're talking with James Redfield. I wanted to ask you, one of our slogans here on the program is called Choices and Knowledge of Those Choices to help make your dreams come true. And it has been said, I don't know who said it, you may know before I do, that all of our choices that we have made in the past have placed us right where we are. Especially, for example, you and I, here we are. Well, all of the choices we've made in our lives, boom, here we are in the present moment. You and I are chatting away, talking about these wonderful ideas. And then all of the choices that we make today will place us where we will be tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. One of my guests said something very profound, and I'd love for your perspective on this. He said, that is true, but throw this into the mix. All of the choices that you make today are based upon your perception of what you think the future will be. And you and I are both optimists. What do you think?
Well, I think that that's probably true. We make our decisions based on the possibilities of tomorrow, what we think will be possible tomorrow, and that's there's people are either optimists or they think better be careful, something bad will happen tomorrow, and a person really has to choose that outlook. I mean, you fall into it because of your family or your parents or your experience, but it's also a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be positive, you want to see a better future. I think that's what we tend to get. And now especially, because I think, with consciousness rising, what happens is that we find a way to be optimistic, and especially if we're more giving, then other people arrive on time to bring solutions, or to bring a new breakthrough into something that we want to do.
Yeah. We're talking with James Redfield here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. And we're all looking for those new ways of living. I say this over and over again, just look around you. The old ways just aren't working. And so we have got to start tapping into something else. And that something else, what might that be? Well, we're going to continue here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and James Redfield is my guest. I wanted to ask you something that someone said when they found out I was going to be interviewing you, that they hadn't heard anywhere yet, having to do with the Celestine Prophecies. Now, from my personal perspective, the answer to this question is irrelevant. I don't care about the answer to this question because I love the story. I love the message. I love the insights. Okay? But the question the question was put to me, is the story of the Celestine prophecy or any part thereof true?
Well, I can answer that easily. All the important parts are true.
Okay. I have to say that the description of the old growth forests is a wonderful thing. And so I live in an area of Santa Barbara where we have a lot of old oak trees, still alive, doing well. And I love the fact that they surround us. There's actually sort of a feeling of protection and comfort in that regard. Now, I don't know whether they're old growth. I'm not sure if an old growth forest constitutes, you got to be 100 years or 1,000 years old as far as a tree is concerned. But I think what you were saying earlier about how we have lost our connection to nature brings up this aspect. I'd love for your thoughts as well. I've said this many times, that nature is our greatest teacher.
Well, I would agree, because we are in nature, and it's just an illusion when we think we're not.
Mm-hmm.
You can be behind the biggest fence in the world, and covered with, in a fortress of concrete, but we're still in nature. We're living a natural life. We have to have air to breathe, and we can't ignore all the other living things out there. To me, when part of the story about the way that the Celestine prophecy emerged that I wrote in the book was really an experience I had in the beginning, where I saw the whole thing. And it took me a long time. This is the first time I've ever publicly described that prelude to the writing of the Celestine Prophecy. Mm-hmm. But where I was on a, we at times in our lives, we go on where we know there these searches for meaning or not, or for direction or not, we go on them. So I decided to walk out in a old growth forest and camp out and just think about things. This was, I was out of grad school and wondering what I was going to do. And so I went out there and just wound up in, I wasn't really even meditating, but there's a power that far deep in the forest. These are, all protected trees, and they're huge and they're old. I recommend that for anybody, because most people don't want to spend the night 2 miles in, right?
Right.
But it's worth it. It's worth, going, being protected and being educated about what might happen out there. But go. That's where the energy, a lot of the descriptions of energy in the book, I was first cognizant of. In the middle of that, I had a very extensive daydream, it didn't quite qualify as a vision, but I'd already was interested in writing, and what happened was, really, I just saw the whole thing, and I don't care. I mean, the theme of my article is that I once cared what people might project on me because of this. I didn't want to be thought as chosen, but I certainly had the intense daydream in which I saw the whole thing. I didn't even know what I was going to write about, but what I saw was that I would find out through these, that would come into my life, and if I had the guts to do it, what would happen is that it would be successful. In fact, it would be a book that was valued all around the world. So imagine having that daydream.
Wow.
When you're in all this angst about what do you do when you're kicked out of grad school. And so I didn't believe a minute of it. Not one. This was a pipe dream. And I didn't believe a bit of it. It was just, one more distraction. I thought that in my mother's cajoling about to go get a real job.
I've heard that too.
But what happened was, I remembered it. Yeah. And when one of these synchronicities, what dropped in my lap virtually was the work of Carl Jung, because I hadn't really digested his break from Freud, which is very, very interesting, and his guts to merge psychology with spirituality, and that was the sort of the breaking point, and that set a stage of learnings and experiences that wound up all being in the Celestine Prophecy. So anyway, I don't even care how people react to this anymore. In my view, again, I'm not worried about being chosen, because I think everyone's chosen.
Yeah. And you've been chosen for the role that you are playing right now, and I've been chosen for the role I'm playing right now, and we choose. We actually, the role's placed before us. It's still our choice as to whether or not we choose to play that. And I myself am having a great time. The only time that I was ever challenged by my mother to go get a real job was when I took 6 months off after graduating high school. And I'm there at home watching soap operas. And she says, "Why don't you go get a job at one of those religious stations?" And I said, "Nah, I don't want them shoving their philosophy, their beliefs down my throat." Of course, the irony was that I was kind of doing that when I started working there. But it's fascinating stuff. We're talking with James Redfield. We're talking about the Celestine Prophecy. I have one other question I want to ask you in that regard as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with James Redfield. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I want to ask you, James, as we come close to the end of our program, You've shared with us a great deal about the how the Celestine Prophecy came about, as far as you're spending time 2 miles into the old growth forest, as it were. What were some of the other inspirations or influences? I mean, you've mentioned Carl Jung as well, that helped to formulate and helped you to create this book that that so many people have read around the world?
Well, I could, I nature, love for nature was sort of instilled in me from a grandfather uh, who was a um, game warden
Oh,
in Alabama when it was still, in the early 20s, 1920s, and Alabama, people in Alabama thought they were still Daniel Boone. They were going to go out and shoot deer. Uh, and there was a real, the woods were barren of wildlife. I mean, so to change that was an enormous effort to be able to protect all the wildlife because it would just disappear. And so my grandfather was a pioneer of that effort. And, that instilled in me a kind of appreciation for nature, but also, um, having to face disruptions, realizing, evolution, even a positive type evolution requires adjustment in people. So he, it's that with that belief, he did that job, which of course just saved many species in the forest. And again, all that was instilled early on. Other than that, really the love of writing and literature, and inherited from my mother, who read a lot of books, especially about growth and spirituality and that sort of thing. So I was all set up for it, and that's when I think of just a look at the draw in terms of where I was placed as a child, I think coming to grips with all that is the way to think of yourself as to being on a unique journey, and thinking of yourself as being prepared to do something that helps the world.
yeah.
And again, that's the greatest fulfillment. It's the way that the world is designed, in my view. You get more rewards than you could ever realize from the good things, the helping efforts that you do in this world. I don't agree with a saying, that every good turn is punished.
Oh, yeah.
It really is not.
Oh, no.
It really is not like that. That's funny, and people use that expression.
Yeah, every good deed, no good deed ever goes unpunished.
That's the way it goes. And that's funny, but that's not the attitude to project in your life.
Exactly.
Because I believe that it's just the opposite of that. Every good deed is rewarded if we keep our.
Now, I have 3 final questions that I ask my guests, but I have one final question in the context of our interview that I'd like to ask you. And that is, if you were stranded on a desert island, and if there was one book that you wanted to have with you, okay? If you even wanted to have a book with you, is there one in particular that you would want to have with you to be able to refer to go back to, and so on and so forth, that has meant something to you maybe most of your life, or maybe you've just come across it recently? But is there one that you would like to have with you?
That's a good question. Um, you know the book that I would choose?
Hmm.
It's a book called Golf in the Kingdom by Michael Murphy. And it's an adventure story, revolves around the mysterious aspect of golf. And if I was stuck on that island, I would be making some golf clubs out of some sticks, and finding a way to because golf is a mystery because it's impossible.
Well,
And
I happen
it can
to.
only be played in a zone, in a real zone, and that's the same zone that the alertness where synchronicity comes in, and we
Well,
catch these synchronistic moments
yeah.
in alertness. So anyway, that would be the
Okay.
one.
Well, I happen to produce and co-host a program called the Golf Radio Show here on this station, and I love the joke that golf is nothing more than something that ruins a perfectly good walk in the park. James Redfield is my guest, and we're teeing it up here. Actually, we're just about to the green of the 18th hole here on our program as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's great to have you with us. James Redfield has been my guest. James, it has been a great pleasure, and I certainly hope that we can have you back again to continue this conversation on a myriad of different subjects dealing with this whole movement that has been going on for a long, long time towards raising and the consciousness of the people, one person at a time, as we transform our lives, and that in turn then transforms our world. And I thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
Well, thank you. It's always fun.
I have three final questions that I did ask you the last time, but sometimes those answers change. And that's why we like to ask them again. But before I do, I need to address you, the listener and the viewer. I want to thank you for listening and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we give you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., 9 a.m., Wednesday mornings for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story, streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com, as well as the podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Blueberry. We're also on iHeart and Amazon Music and many other locations, and on YouTube where you can watch these interviews. And I hope you'll subscribe to either or and the podcasts and videocasts. We'd love to have you do that so that every time I post a new one, boom, you're going to be notified, and we certainly hope that you will do that. If you'd like to support the work that we are doing financially, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a PayPal and Patreon account for your security as well as ours. And when you go to PayPal to support us, they're going to ask you for an email address, and it's richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And also participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we hope that you will spend that time going within, listening to that still small voice. And as we wrap up our program, we dive into the three final questions of our podcast, videocast, and ask the first question: who is James Redfield?
Who is James Redfield? I'm going to give you definitely a different answer. James Redfield now is a person who feels the obligation to tell the truth, and that's what I do. And I don't sometimes. it's pushy, to tell the truth, but I try to do that. And you know, I told Joseph I had a new book going, so it's going to be about the truth. So it's going to be fun, and you know, that's me.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
You know, I want to continue to you know, to focus on how the world is really designed spiritually, and to really illuminate maybe how we can get in alignment with that design. Because that's where you know, the miracle of synchronicity happens. That's where all the inspiration happens, and that's creates the life that we're all supposed to be living. And so that's important. Yeah.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
Well, my life's purpose, I think, is really to look beneath the surface and bring out truths that matter. If I had to say it in a sentence, that's it.
Well, James, again, I thank you for joining us here on the program, and always for giving us so much time. And it was a challenge to get here, but it was well worth it. I tell you, I don't know about you, but this was fabulous.
Well, I enjoyed it as well, and let's do it soon again.
Absolutely, we will. I'm Richard Dugan. This has been Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love, Talal.